Hello and welcome to this demonstration of the Power Platform BPM Toolkit. I'm Dr. Flo. I'm also known as Serge Luca, an MVP in Office 365 and business application. I'm also the author of the PowerAutomate in a Day training material, and I have my own company with another MVP, Isabelle van Kempenhout, and the company is called Power Platform Associate, based in Brussels in Belgium. So this slide illustrates what we do in Power Platform Associate. And we have a concept called the Power Platform Factory 2020, where we have a whole process that allow our customer to start using the Power Platform, to securing the Power Platform. We have a whole governance process, and we've defined many tools. So for instance, we focus on IT governance and strategy. So we have a checklist for that. Tenant administration, we have another checklist. Platform learning, adoption, security, and enterprise architecture. So in this session, I will talk a little bit more about one specific topic of the enterprise architecture, which is the BPM, so business process management. Because creating a BPM tool is very complex, so BPM means business process management, so that's very complex. BPM tools are very expensive, and actually many problems can be seen as a case. And I've defined a very simple case management pattern, so I also have an implementation of it. And in case management, approval are very important. There are different types of approvals. So it's not just approving something and stopping the whole workflow, but it's also saying that you don't recommend something or you recommend something, but even though you might not recommend something, the workflow can go to the next step, for instance. Okay, so approval is something that can be very complicated. And in the case of my favorite tool, PowerAutomate, approval are very nice, are very fine for citizen developer. However, they are far too limited for business process management. And so that's why I've created a free and an open source reference implementation of a BPM. What you're going to see is a first step, is a proof of concept, and later on I will make that more generic. But I have to use that for one of my customers. Just to illustrate that some cases can be very complicated. So if I take one case, the case of one HR request, and the requirement for my customer are that actually my customer has 70 type of HR requests. And there is 7 different type of logic, so 7 different type of workflows of business process. And the whole approval process, so it's all pipeline, can take up to 1 year. Most of the time is several weeks or several months, but it can take up to 1 year. And supervisor, as well as user, want to see the next step and the previous step. So they want to have an overview of the whole process when the process is running. Also, supervisor and users want to see a dashboard of all business process. I don't want to be too boring, but let's take a specific case. And that's come from the real world. That's one of the requirements for my customer. So we have a leave request. So an employee make a leave request for medical reason, and the employee is based in Paris. So this leave request will have to validate it by a doctor. That means that's very sensitive information. So only the doctor and the employee can see this information. And validation by the doctor means medical document, okay? And then the legal department would check if this leave request is a right, then nobody can reject it, or if it is an option. Then it's going to be validated by the user line manager, and then it will be validated by a first line HR manager in Paris, and then by the supervisor HR in Paris, and then it will be validated by the supervisor HR in Brussels, and then validated by the director in Brussels. Okay, so it's kind of a serial process. However, you might have some redirection. So, for instance, the system can, or the supervisor can get back to the initial steps and ask the user to restart again and provide new additional information, and then we restart the process. Also, at different level, people want to be able to communicate with other actors. So not just redirect, just communication, internal communication, not sending an email, communication within the system. So there are many other requirements, but first we need to talk a little bit about the PowerAutomate Approval. So if, let's say, you have a list of approvers and you define this list, for instance, in an array here, this variable, you can create an apply to each, and in the apply to each, you can create an approval, use the create approval action, and use the wait for an approval, right? By doing this, this can generate actually some code that you can brand, send to teams by using adaptive card. That's cool. And then when user react, we have a switch, and in the switch you can check if the response was approved, reject, or something else. The problem with this is that actually after 30 days the workflow stops, and even the approval in the workflow can stop. Actually, it's the workflow that stopped, right? So the option for, well, the workaround is to have, for instance, a parallel branch where you would check every day if you don't reach 28 days, so that before 30 days you can react and notify people that, okay, we need to hurry up. But for BPM, because in many cases it can take several months, so this system does not really work, right? So, and sometimes in the workflow you have many approvals, not just one, many approvals. So it's complicated. In the past, I did propose a pattern that works, which is the controller pattern. So I've used that in production with several customers, but I want to do something more. And when you send an email, when the approval system, the out-of-the-box approval system in the PowerAutomate send the approval, this can be customized, but basically you get something like this. So you get an email from this email address. You can send the approval from a shared mailbox if you want and customize that. But then the user has an approve or reject button. When the user click on the approve, you get a text box, can put a reason, some comment, click on submit, then the workflow goes to the next step. Also, there is a dashboard, which is very primitive, but for many cases, for many business cases, it's good enough actually. So you have a dashboard where you can go and see all the received approval, the sent approval, and the history. But that's not what most of my customers want, at least in the context of BPM. As I mentioned before, flow duration is 30 days. Approval duration is actually more than 30 days because approvals are stored in common data service. So even after 30 days, the approval is still there. So you can use common data service trigger to handle the some approval change, but that's not easy to do. Canceling a flow, not just an approval, but the whole process should be done. Canceling an approval is also something complicated because first, only the approval requester can do it. Also, if you want to do that automatically by code, you need to create a custom connector. And there are limitations in this custom connector. And of course, custom connector require premium license. In my case, my customer didn't want premium license or was not ready for buying a premium license. Also, sometimes we want to be able to redirect the approval automatically, not just manually. So basically, we need a state machine. So going to a previous steps means actually, technically, you are implementing a state machine. And in PowerAutomate, only the user who send who get the approval can redirect. So sometimes we want a supervisor or a group of people to be able to redirect an approval, and we want to do that automatically. you can also, also something very important, which is that supervisor must be able to delegate tasks. So let's say you send an approval to a user X. Sometimes user X is not available. So supervisor must be able to say, oh, these users, anytime this user gets an approval, I want this other user to be able to reject or to react on this approval. Okay, so we need a delegation system. We need many things: reminder, delegation system. Even any user should be able to define his own delegate. And a user should be able to say, I want to delegate my task from this date to that date. So if you have any pending workflow waiting for you to approve, the system should automatically reassign the approval to your delegate and also the future steps. And that's basic requirement for my customers. Of course, you can redirect an approval by creating a custom connector, but even with a custom connector, it's very limited. There are many options that you cannot have with this. So I've defined what we call a case management pattern. I want to make that simple. So basically, here's how it works. And I've used that in previous projects, so that solves many issues, which is you need actually two tables or two entities, depending on the type of technology you want to implement that on. So we have, for instance, let's say a SharePoint list called cases and a second list called case lifecycle. Anytime there is a new case, automatically the case will go to the lifecycle. So in the lifecycle, you'll have one entry for each step. New case, new lifecycle, 3 entries for each step, etc., etc. So just by defining two lists, you can do a lot of things. So I didn't want to implement a monster, right? So I want to keep it that simple. So now let's take a look at my proof of concept, the Power Platform BPM Toolkit. Okay, so let's go to the following SharePoint site. So actually so I've implemented this in a SharePoint site because my customer didn't want to buy premium license. However, the user will only interact with apps. So here you see a website, but people will never see any SharePoint list. So it's only apps, right? Everything is completely hidden. And so let's take a very simple case. I have more complex cases, but a user wants to submit an expense. And then there is a form. So actually this is a Power App application. And we want to go to, well, we have American friend and European friend. So we can go to a city which is in Cambridge. And the approver are, let's say, several approver. This guy. So basically what I'm going to illustrate is a serial approver, but I can also do other type of approver. So user 3, for instance, and then user 4. So basically we have 5 approver. So the system will ask all these 5 people to approve in serial. In this case, it's in serial. So we submit, right? So you submit, that means this request will be stored in the case management list, so the case list, and then it will be copied in the lifecycle list, and then it will go to the approval process. So in the meantime, what supervisor and some users will see is the dashboard. The dashboard, you will love it. The dashboard give an overview of every business process that are currently running. Okay, so each line here is a running, or most of the time running, business process. Okay, it's a real business process. And you can see here we have different type of colors. So all cases, all business process that are actually approved waiting mode, rejected, or stopped. So, for instance, if I say I want to see all the waiting, the business process that are in waiting state, then you can see these. Okay, and you can navigate through the different business process and interact with every steps if you want. So let's refresh a little bit. Normally you should see Cambridge. So Cambridge is here. It is actually running, is waiting on this user. So orange means waiting. And when it's gray, that means the next step will be executed later on, right? So you can filter, you get KPIs on different type of cases. So you have 7 waiting cases. If I take, for instance, you can search through all the workflow. For instance, I want to find a workflow having the following keyword. Let's say, well, Cambridge. Okay, or I don't know, Paris, for instance. Yeah, Paris across all. Yeah, this one has been stopped actually. Right, so it's pretty cool. So let's now we'll go to Cambridge, right? So if I click here as a supervisor, I will be able to interact with the business process. So as I mentioned before, this business process is waiting here. So it's waiting that Serge Luca approve. So that means Serge Luca has probably received an approval request. I'm Serge Luca. So if I log into my email, normally, what time is it? 8:07, so 8:05, so that's fine. So I have received an approval request. Okay, with this information, of course, I can add additional information if needed. And when I click here, I will get a task forms, a fully branded task form. So this is a PowerApps form, right? And so you get all the details of your request. User can click on approve or reject. There are other options, actually, like positive feedback, negative feedback, because if you reject, the workflow stops here. So, and you can put a comment. So, for instance, this is fine for me. And even better is you can see here, show graph means that if you want, you can take a look at the whole workflow. So you can navigate through the workflow. You can see, okay, you are here. The workflow is waiting on you, but you can check if you don't have any important people in the workflow in the next step, for instance, so that you won't make any bad joke in the comment, right? So that's what my customer want. They want to be able to analyze all workflow. They want to know the context, basically. Okay, so that's pretty cool, I think. So you can put a comment. You can see the previous comment if there are any. Okay, so then let's say I'm gonna approve this. Okay, so if I go back to dashboard, let's go back to the dashboard on Cambridge. Let's refresh this. Normally you should see that, oh, the first step is now green. That means this guy did approve the request. And so the process is slowly moving to the next step. So you will see in a few seconds that these steps will become orange. Okay, so it can take maybe 20 seconds, so it depends. Here we go. So if I go to the approval arrow, you should see, because normally this one refresh automatically, you should see that actually the system moved to user 1. Okay, you can see here that the workflow is running. Even better, as a supervisor, of course I'm the supervisor at the moment, you can get back here and you can see, oh, there is an icon here. That means this user put a comment. Okay, and the user can also put documents, in which case you will be able to download or to visualize the document from here, directly from this window. Okay, so basically here, so additional metadata will be provided. So if you go there, you can see that the system is waiting for user 1 to approve. As a supervisor, only as a supervisor, you can do many actions on this step. So you can skip this step, you can reassign, you can insert a new step, redirect, for instance. So let's say after 1 day, you notice or you get a phone call telling you that, hey, this user got an accident, so he won't be able to approve his workflow. So there are different possibilities. You can reassign all the tasks of this user. That's also an option in this tool. Or you can say, oh, I'm going to skip this step, right? So let's skip it. So it can take a while. Don't forget that an HR request can take a year to complete. I mean, so we should not be patient. So 20 seconds is nothing. So the system is working slowly. I will show you the code afterwards. Normally this page is automatically refreshed, but I want to go faster. So you will see now that normally user 2 will be in waiting mode. So here we go. Okay, so we see we have a clock here. It's orange. So the workflow is waiting here. If I go back to the dashboard, normally you should see it. Yeah. Okay. So now I can say, oh, the workflow is running. But while the workflow is running, you can say, oh, I would like to add a new guy. I forgot one approver. So I would like to put someone in the pipe, right? So you should be able to say this, insert a new step. And then I still have to put the code for retrieving user email. But anyway, I'm going to put a user, let's say 7, just here. You will see. So even though the workflow is running, it's alive. Normally you should see the new user. Okay, so let's wait a little bit. If you buy premium, actually you get the change automatically, right? So let's refresh. And now you see user 7 now, right? So you can add new step if you want, or even remove existing step because you want to go faster for any reason that you want. Only as a supervisor. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now, let's say as a supervisor, you want to reassign this. So you can say, I want to reassign that to, yeah, let's say user 1, for instance. Yeah, or user 9. User 1 is already there, so user 9. Okay, so here, then it should work. If I refresh, you should see user 9, right? So user 9 got a new approval request, similar to the one I showed you before. So now let's say you want to redirect the workflow to step 0, to the beginning, for instance. Well, actually, you can do that. Have a lot of fun, right? So you can redirect this guy here. You can see that. Redirect, confirm. Normally, yeah, I got an email. So it's actually working. Let's refresh. And that works. So this user has got a new request. So we restart the workflow. Okay. So that's really fun, and the graph works. So that's very fun. So now, yeah, I would like to show you something else. So we are here, and we want to say as a supervisor, because if you're not supervisor, you cannot interact with these buttons, all right? So you want to say, hey, I want to stop this workflow. I want to stop it for any reason. I want to stop it, right? So the whole workflow, the whole pipeline, not just one approval. So you can say here, stop the workflow. Let's refresh. Here we go. It stopped. if you go to the dashboard, you should see that it's actually stop, right? So if I check the, yeah, stop, Cambridge is there. Stop. And no, let's say even you are still a supervisor, you want to remove this workflow. It's removed from the dashboard. Well, it's removed from the dashboard, but it's still recorded somewhere because internal audit want to keep a trace of that, right? So that's a compliance aspect, which is also managed in this this product. You see? So if I go back to the dashboard, normally you should not see workflow anymore. So yeah, that's cool. So well, there are many possibilities in this tool. This open the door to many things. And that's a roadmap. What's in the roadmap? I've a lot of things in the roadmap. So first, this is a proof of concept, so it works. Okay, so my customer will get the same, well, more or less the same implementation. So, but I want first to make that cleaner, right? So I'm going to work on a clean generic version. So and I want to make that, I want to share the code. I want to share the pattern. I want to share the code. You can use it if you want. If you want to reuse the ID, just the ID, well, do it. I mean, I would be more than happy to share it, right? So in GitHub, of course, in GitHub. Also, I want to put some analytics because in any case management, there are plenty of analytics out of the box that people want. For instance, you want to know on average how long each or an average of how long it takes to process some different type of request, HR request. You want to know, for instance, who are the bottlenecks? Okay, are there some specific people as a bottlenecks, or more some specific service or some specific request? How can we improve the whole business? Right. So basically, that's the point. Also, I did redirect. Right, so you can go from one state to any other state. So technically, it's state machine. I want state machine to be visible in the graph. So I want a redirection arrow that go from the source to the destination. That's just for fun because my customer don't want that. Very important as well is the RACI, right? So responsibility assignment matrix. So you need to define roles. Which role can do what? Also very important is the notification because sometimes previous approver want to be notified if someone put a comment, for instance. So notification in BPM is very sensitive, very important. So some manager need to be notified. So also this POC or this kind of toolkit works for free in SharePoint Online, right? So and that works. However, if you want, if you have the money, you can you will be able to use CDS. So I will provide a common data service implementation. If you want to use SQL Server, Azure, or Oracle, or whatever, do it. With other premium features. There will be other premium features as well. Security model, well, that's also the RACI. I need to define specific roles. This is very complicated, so I'm still working on it. Also, what I've shown you is one type of workflow is serial approval, which is dynamic, right? So you can put as many approver as you want. There's no limitation, no time limitation, no number of approver limitation. However, there are different type of logic. So here, the system, actually, I will show you how that works, but the system dynamically generates steps and flow just follow the logic of the steps. But you may want to provide your own workflow logic. So provide a kind of extension point to hook up your own workflow in the workflow, in the whole business process, your own custom logic if you want. That's also what my customer wants. Compliance is very important because this is required by most of the time by internal audit. So you need to know exactly what needs to be protected. As I show you, this is HR information, so it's highly sensitive. So we use permission, in this case, SharePoint permission all the time, everywhere. the CDS security model is way better than SharePoint, but that works very well in SharePoint. There are some scalability issue with the unique permission, but we have load balancing on server list. So compliance, you need to know exactly how long you want to keep or you can keep the information. Or what kind of information should be anonymized as well. I want to make that more generic. Also, something interesting, which is I want to minimize human approval by using machine learning. So I did it in a previous project by using Azure ML, but if you want, you can use the AI builder. If in some specific case is the same person always approve the same type of request, then the system might just automatically approve. Okay, so less approval request, also less notification. This thing is also very interesting. For instance, let's say you have 20 workflow and they're all waiting for one guy to approve or one row to approve. So there is a bottleneck on one specific guy. Then I want the system to be smart enough to analyze all situation and say to the supervisor, oh, there is something strange going on. Perhaps should you investigate? There might be something with this guy. All the workflow are waiting on this guy and there's no delegation in place. So you have to do something, act on this, right? So, and parallel stages. So I want to be able to have some parallel stages and converging point, thing like this. So now I'm pretty sure you want to see how that works. And I'm going to quickly show you the code. Let's go to powerapps.com. This is not a clean code because I want to make that cleaner, more generic. The name will be changed. Everything will be changed. As soon as it's clean, I will share it. So everything is in one solution. I've named it Approval Factory, but it's going to be case management something. And so I have a bunch of flows and power apps. And basically, I have two flows, two main flows, which the one is case generator. So when there is a new case created in the case list, this flow starts. Let's wait a little bit. This flow starts. And so when an item is created, it does not, when an item is created, and then we load delegation information, right? So there is delegation, fetch approver, initialize the workflow. And here, this is interesting because this flow, based on the workflow logic that we want to focus on, dynamically generates steps. Okay, so for each approver, it generates steps. So it creates a step for this case in the life cycle, right? So let me illustrate this. So if I go to the SharePoint side, so you can see I have two lists. One, which is actually the case list, I will change the name. And the other one is the life cycle, right? I would change the name as well, approval trace. So here, this is the cases, right? So, okay. So for instance, Cambridge is down below. Cambridge is there. And this one is the life cycle, right? So this is actually the case ID that we retrieve in the life cycle. And based on the situation, the system generates steps, dynamically generates steps. You can see, for instance, this is probably, Cambridge. Yeah, Cambridge. Actually, this is probably Cambridge, right? So we have step 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So this one is another one. It generates step based on the logic. Even during the running of the workflow, the system can dynamically add new steps, right? And do things like this. So actually, we have a flow that generates a logical workflow, right? And the flow just follow the meta workflow logic in this SharePoint list. And this gives me a lot of flexibility. right? So, and actually you can see this is actually a scope, but this will become an extension point. This will become a workflow, a dedicated child workflow. So you will be able to provide your own workflow that will generate steps based on your own custom logic if you want, and your own workflow will be used by the main flow. Okay, so this is the first flow, and then we have a second flow, which is, let's go to the solution, which is, yeah, case life cycle. Yes, case life cycle. So anytime there is a new approval or rejection or canceling, this flow start, analyze the situation, change the current waiting step, and find the next waiting step, right? So if you add a new step, this workflow will be triggered and will add the new step on the correct position with the correct status. Okay, you can see that it runs on the approval. Of course, I use trigger condition. So in the settings, I use a trigger condition, right? So it does not trigger all the time. So there are many other workflows. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but for instance, if I take the approval dashboard, yes, approval dashboard, this is a Canva application. And so basically this Canva application, I have to clean that up because I didn't name all the control as I wanted. It's just the POC. It will be clean in the GitHub version. But as you can see, well, no, it's not this one. It's another one. It's another one. It is in solution. It is, yeah, the full case dashboard, not approval dashboard, full case dashboard. So it's actually a Canva apps with a gallery containing another gallery. I had a lot of fun with this guy. So yep. So I have a screen. Yeah, I know it's dirty because I didn't rename the field, but and then I have a gallery, which is this, and the gallery contains another gallery, right? So it's actually cool, and that's what I want. I want it to be simple, so I can refresh, I can search, etc. Okay. And in the solution, I have many other flows. Instead of, for instance, creating a custom connector for redirecting an approver or for reassigning an approval or for canceling an approval, right? So I did something easy to maintain and that does not require premium, which is I create a child flow. The flow is called, well, child flow is a flow that is called by the Power App or a flow called by another flow. Example here, skip or reassign, right? So this is a flow. Or stop case, stop the whole workflow, or remove a case. Okay, so you click on skip or reassign. Okay, you can see it's called by Power Apps. It gets information in the approval trace, and then it do is kind of magic in the approval list, in the case lifecycle list, right? So I have many child flow, and yeah, I think in this context, child flow are way better and more flexible and more powerful than custom connector. So sometimes you need custom connector, but not in this situation, right? So and voila. So I hope that you enjoy it. So the next step is I have to make that clean, to document that, to share that on GitHub, to show a tutorial, and in parallel I'm going to use that for my customer, and I'm going to work on the next iteration. I have plenty of ideas, more than what you saw on the roadmap slide. Okay, so well, give me your feedback if you like it or not. So that's something. This is a kind of issue that I wanted to solve since the beginning of PowerAutomate. I don't know why I didn't do that before, because I mean, it's actually very simple, right? Thank you very much.